Hey guys, hope you guys are doing awesome today. My name is Ben and I teach you how to write Unity shaders from scratch. In today's video, we are doing a color lookup table, and we're actually lerping between two color lookup tables. One is a desaturated one and one is an oversaturated one. However, these lookup tables can be set, they can be solarized, it can be completely black and white. You have full control on what you want to do in the lookup table. This video will actually also go over exactly what is going on here and the math behind the lookup table. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So the setup for this effect is quite simple. It is actually based off of the previous video. I can link that one in the description below. If you don't know how I got to this stage, please check out that video. It'll help clarify a lot of things. I added a new tint mode here in the enum. I called it color lookup table, and I also added a new texture parameter here in our tint effect component that allows us to select a lookup table right here. Next, since I added this new enum, I've also added a new keyword. I just call it color LUT. As you can see here, all it does is enables the keyword or disables it. In my previous video, I actually made a mistake. I had two blits. We don't actually necessarily need those two blits. We don't even need a temp texture. In fact, as you can see here, I removed this. I can also remove the temp texture release. At the same time, I can also remove this, the allocation of the new temp texture, and I don't even need this one at all. Earlier at the beginning of the video, I actually made a mistake. I said that there were no changes to this this lookup table. Is a texture that I had to add because we needed to add it. I'm actually going to move it down here in the color lookup table section. In our shader, you can see color LUT. I have this as a new keyword that I added up here. So whenever it's enabled, it will run the code in here. Let's just make sure it's working. By returning 1, it's now blitting to white. So yes, we know it's working. Right now I'm blitting it back to itself, pretty much back to its background. So right now I'm going to take a moment to best explain how the color lookup table works. You've probably seen stuff like this. This is a color lookup table. If you count the number of squares here, there are 32 of them. At the same time, the pixels high is also 32. This in pixels in terms of the width though is actually 1024. If we took 1024 and we divide it by 32, we can see we get 32. If I use this tool and I think about the number of pixels between this point and this point, there's also 32 of them. Same as the height. So from this point and this point, there are 32 pixels in the height. What we want to do is we want to take the color that we get from our main image, so our game camera, the frame buffer, and we want to match it to this, to whatever pixel color that is the closest. So let's go back here. See the red here? What we want to do is match it to the red. In this case, let's just say we're using the red where my mouse is. It's probably going to go here. Here is where it's high in red, no green, and no blue. However, if it's the blue channel, it might go all the way to the 32 side on my right where my mouse is, and it's probably going to look for a spot here. This table, the color lookup table I have behind me, this is called a neutral color lookup table. And the goal of having a neutral one is when it's applied, there should be very little differences between the actual image you see here and the colors here. Only then, when we modify this table in Photoshop or whatever tool you like to use, for example, let's just say we desaturated it, then you can get a desaturated effect when you apply the color lookup table. So one of the concepts that I need you to understand is that we're trying to sample inside this block. So if we're trying to sample a blue color, if it's very blue, let's just say, the blue is at 100% and the green is at say 50% and the red is, 20%, right? Where this point will line up is blue at 100%. It will definitely take the cell furthest over here. This is the 31st cell. This being 0, 1, 2, all the way up to number 31. Okay, so when we look at blue, we say, okay, 31st cell. Green, what we want to do is Green, as you can see, is the height, right? Green over here is at the top of this image is 0. All the way across, it's always 0. But at the bottom, it is at 100% green. So if 50% green, we would probably be sampling somewhere in the middle. Now, red. Red is about 20% red. So red, 20% red would be, you can think of it as each of these blocks going from 0 to 100 in terms of red. So let's just say this was the pixel color that we are trying to sample. We want to go to the 31st cell, which is this one, the one at the very end, right? So next we want to have 50% green. Well, the further down it goes, the more green it is. But 50% is kind of right in the middle. So we want to look somewhere in the middle. Red, about 20%. We're starting from this part of the cell. This is the start of the cell to the end. 20%, let's just say, is about here. So the pixel we're going to sample is probably this one right here. Let's just say the blue was, say 50% blue. Green was, say, 80%. And red was also, say 100%, okay? Let's just say this is the 16th cell, okay? This is number 16. So we're in the 16th cell, 80% green, so pretty far down, and 10% or 100% red, so we would be right here. All right, so the first thing we want to do is set up the size of our texture. So the size of our texture is 32. That means the maximum number of colors we can have, the position, the index, goes from 0 to 31. Let's capture that. So a simple float, max color is equal to 32, which is the size of the texture, the number of cells in the texture. It could be 16, could be 64. Any number actually works, but we're going to use 32 because it makes the most sense in this case. So, and we'll minus 1. Oops, minus 1. So this is you can think of this as the index color. Or no, this is the max color, max index of this color. As you can see up here, I've already actually set up the lookup table in terms of the texture 2D, the sampler, as well as this texel size. So if we go to Unity's documentation, as you can see here, if we put a texture name underscore texel size, we get this information. What we want is the Z and the Y. We want the width and the height of this texture. The reason why is because we want to sample the midpoint of that pixel. What we want is the very midpoint of this. So to do that, what we need is, let's just say float x 0.5 divided by the lookup texel size dot z, right? And then for the y, it would be dot w. Actually, wait 1 second. Let's admit. Z is the width. That's right. So for x would be the width, y would be the height. So that makes sense to me. Next, we want is a threshold. The threshold would be the maximum color that we can get here. So we don't want to go past 32. So what we want to do is get this spot right here. So this makes the most sense if we develop something that has a range between the lowest point, which is this, it's not exactly 0, but in the highest point, which is not exactly 1. So in order to do that, what we do is we take the lowest point, which is this size. So let's just say we do float red color, I think, red sample. We take the lowest point, which is the X pixel point, plus the background color. Now we're actually taking into account the color dot red, right? Times 31 over 32. So you can also think of it as float threshold. So think of this as 31. Oops, I'm going to put it in comments here. Think of it as 31 over 32. So let's kind of do the math for this so it's a little bit easier to understand. So if I use this as a way to make sense of it, The X is a little bit hard to understand. The Y would be easier. So, in fact, this is the green sample. So the Y is easier to understand, so let's just do the Y first. Let's just say the green was at 0, okay? If we're using our pixel point, which is the size of the position in terms of the height here, remember, we're thinking in Y now, the position of the height here, so which is 0.5 divided by 32, right? That would help us get to this spot right here, right? Then we add on the background color plus, let's just say it is 0, times the threshold, which is 32 divided by 31. Oh, sorry, 31 divided by 32. We would get this number, 0.15. If we are not, instead of 0, let's just say we are at the very middle, 0.5, we should get 0.5. And if we are at 1, we should get 0.98, which is going to be right here, right? So this formula gives us the range between the pixels, but not at the very 0 and not at the very 1. Does that kind of make sense? So whatever number we put in here, we're going to get a number that's slightly off this 0.7 because we want it between, we basically want it between these two numbers. So the green sample is a little bit easier to understand. The harder one to make sense of is actually the red one. So let's do the red, and red is also the one in X, right? Now the reason why the red one is hard to understand is because we cannot just do 0 to 1. This is a range of 0 to 1, but red is actually across this entire thing, right? And we don't know what cell we're going to be. So what we need is actually the range between one cell. So in other words, we need the range that is between 1 over 32. So that means wherever it is 0, it needs to be at a very, very small number. And whenever it's at 1, it needs to be at this, this number. So our red channel is actually between 0 and this number, okay? So in order to do that, what we do is we take this entire value threshold and we divide it by 32. Because again, like I said, we're not looking for the entire range. We're looking for between this point and this point. And the range of this is between 0 and that 0.3 that we found, okay? The size of this is just 0.3. This will make a lot more sense when I add in the cell position. So let's do the cell position now. The cell position is actually quite simple. What we need to do is floor to an integer, right? So we do the blue position, a blue sample, is equal to floor, background blue, and we floor how? We floor based on the max color. So 32 positions. So let's say our blue is in the middle, like say 0.5 times the max color, which is 31. We'll probably get something in the middle, let's just say index number 16, right? So our blue sample, which is really a cell, which cell, I'll add the word cell here to make a little bit more sense, will tell us which cell we are trying to sample from. So now we have the green, which is from 0 to 1. We have the red, which is from 0 to 0.3 in this space. And we have this, which is the cell, which cell number we are going for. So once we have all these three values, how do we actually sample which cell? It's actually quite simple. Let's do the height first, because the height is the easiest one to understand. So where is our position? This is the look up position. Okay, it's a float 2. The reason why the height is the easiest, because all we do is drop in the green channel here. I'm going to put 0 for now, and we'll drop in the green channel here. The green sample is just from 0 to 1. That is the easiest. The other one, we need to come up with a formula that picks the right cell and then the right space in that cell. So to pick the right cell, what we do is we take the cell and we divide it by 32. This will get us which cell. For example, if blue was 0.5 times this 31 max color, we'll get around a value of maybe 16. We take that number of 16 and divide it by 32, we will get up our lookup position. We will get maybe around 0.5, right? Because we are trying to get that which cell. However, that will only get us the beginning, okay? We also need to get the red. To get the red, we simply add it on. So what I have highlighted right in here gets us which cell we're in, and it starts at the very beginning where my mouse is. If it's this cell, it would start right here. Adding on the red sample, remember it goes between a range of 0 to 0.03, could add up all the way to this end, unless it goes to the next cell, right? So that is our lookup position of this. Finally, now that this is done, we can actually return our sampler. So instead of background sample, I'm going to copy this. We're going to do sample texture 2D, LUT, LUT sampler, and the lookup position that we so painfully calculated. Let's return the color graded color and see what it looks like. Totally off. I think there is one mistake here, obviously, and that is our lookup table. If I go to the actual lookup table, the green is at the bottom. However, when we did the math, we expected the green to be at the top. So we could flip this, or we can just simply do a 1 minus on the green sample. Great. If you look very closely, and I don't even know if it'll show up on the camera, is if we turn on and off this effect, the color will change ever so slightly. The reason for this is because it could be one of two things. Either A, my lookup table is not actually a neutral lookup table and there's some slight pixels that are wrong in there, or it could be just because it's 32 by 32, it has to sample to the nearest color and it's just not quite perfect. So let's just say we have now this system where we have lookup tables. How do we actually use it? Well, in Photoshop, what we can do is we can actually take this lookup texture and we can apply different effects such as desaturations. Let's just say we went to here and we took the contrast and cranked it. No, let's not do that. We took the saturation and we desaturated it, or we did other modifications to it. We oversaturated it. We'll get a lookup table that could be modified. So it looks something like this. I've already pre-created a couple things. So we have an oversaturated, which looks something like this. And I also created a desaturated one. It looks something like that. And all I did was go to Photoshop and desaturate the lookup table, and it created this effect. How artists typically do this or manage this is they actually take the neutral lookup table, they take a screenshot of the game that they want, they put the neutral lookup table at the bottom, and then they do their modifications, and then they put it back, this texture in the game. It's usually not my job to find to make this texture. Usually artists create it for me and I just simply plug it in. One thing I decided to quickly add, because it's actually not too complicated to slip in, is I added a second lookup table, as you can see here. Here I added another lookup table. I just called it LUT2. And here I created one more color grade, LUT2. And also up here, I had to create a new LUT2 and an LUT2 sampler. Once that was done, I just lerped it between the two based on the intensity value that I already have here. So now that that works, now we can create this effect where it lerps between the desaturated one. So at 0, it is fully desaturated, or 0.01 is fully desaturated. And then at 1, it is fully oversaturated, actually. And you can even go beyond that. Actually, I don't really know why completely negative goes to back to normal. Yeah, I'm actually not too sure why that happens. I do hope you guys learned something. This one was a little bit complicated. I don't know if I explained the lookup table math well enough. If not, please do let me know and I will try my best to teach in a better way. But I do hope this is something that helps you guys create your own lookup table effect. So if you guys like what you see, please like, subscribe, and support my channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.